as you saw in the previous video, the power pack is option number 1, plugging your DC input in here. The second option is the battery pack. These cameras come with these lithium-ion power cameras or power batteries, and these batteries will generally give you the guts of 2 to 3 hours power if you're working off battery alone. They have a check button on the side. You can see it here, check. When you press it, 3 lights will light up if the battery is full, 2 if it's half full, 1 if it's getting close to empty, but you will generally get 3 hours out of these. You can see on the back of this battery there's the corresponding raised V-shape that slots into the indented V-shape here on the back of the camera. So we slot it in literally like that, and when we are done and we want to remove the battery, there's a push button just here. You can see it on the side there, and when you push that in, you can free the battery again. When you put the battery on, if the power pack is plugged in, as it is in this case, the battery won't override the power pack. It'll be vice versa, so it's still taking power from the battery pack. Okay, so these are your 2 power-up options. Next, we look at our cards. Now, what we are using with these JVC cameras are the simple little memory cards. When the time comes, we will give each group a memory card. It will be contained in a little plastic container, as you see here. What we generally do is we give you a 16 gig card. The important thing to remember with this card is that the precious part is the gold coloured terminal at the back. If this gets scratched or covered in dust or anything, it can damage the recording power of the card and you may lose footage. When you insert the card into the camera, this terminal goes face down. And the other thing to note is the little grey slider switch. You can barely see it there, but trust me, there's a little grey slider switch on the card. If you push that down, you inhibit recording on the card. It's to protect footage. So if you get a message on your LCD screen or your viewfinder that says REC inhibit, record inhibit, it means that somebody has pushed this little slider down. You just push it back up and the card is capable of recording. These cameras can take 2 cards. The card slots are situated here, and you can see it says slot A and slot B. There's an open for each of those little plastic cases, and then you can see the card slots in here. For the purposes of today, I'm just going to put a singular card into slot A. It goes in, it stops about 3/4 of the way in. You then have to push it in. A red light lights up here, and when the card is red, it turns green. You can then close up, and if I turn around so I can show you my display here, remember 90 degrees out, 180 degrees up, and then in. You can see here that it clearly says card A has 89 minutes worth of recording time on it. Card B is empty, so it's not giving me any reading on that. Okay, we'll pause the card here for a second just to say that generally we will give you 16 gigabyte cards which are capable of recording exactly 1 hour's worth of high definition material. If you wish, you can put 2 cards in, one into slot A and one into slot B, and you can then decide, for instance, that you want to record all your interviews on slot A, and when you want to do cutaway material, you'll record them on slot B. How do you change from slot to slot? A simple button here that says slot select. When you press slot select, it jumps between the 2 cards inserted into slot A or slot B. So at the moment, here's our LCD display, and what we see on this is exactly the same as what we will see in our viewfinder here when we look into the viewfinder. Now at the moment I have the lens cap on. I'm going to take it off. So now you can clearly see that the camera is displaying what it's looking at in terms of the room. At the moment you're just seeing the green curtain and the television in the background. We have an option directly above this screen. If you look at the 4 buttons along here, you will see one button is called display. When you press display, you see that you now get graphic text instead of a picture on the screen, and this graphic text shows us a number of things. It shows us that we are in standby mode, that we've got card A inserted, capable of recording 89 minutes worth of time, that we have a power pack giving full power. It tells us the format we are shooting in, it tells us time code, but importantly for now it tells us channel 1 and channel 2. And these bars bouncing up and down, measured in decibels, are basically the audio levels that we are recording at. They go 40, 30, 20, 10, 0. It's important to remember that with these cameras, the sound should be above 20 and below 0. When these bars hit 20, they turn yellow on the LCD screen and on the viewfinder monitor. So you know when you look in display mode, If your camera bars are bouncing up as high as 20, that you are safe in terms of your recording. If they're any lower, the sound isn't high enough. If they go right up to the top, a little red bar will light up here with the word over on it, and that is telling you your sound is too loud and it's being distorted. We can control this sound in one of two ways. We pop our window open and bring it out. You can see there are 4 little rectangular areas in here, one of which is called Audio Select for channel 1 and channel 2. The 2 settings here are auto or manual. On auto mode, you are asking the camera to operate its own internal compressor, and this will balance the sound levels so that generally 95% of the time in auto mode, the camera will increase the sound if it is too low and decrease the sound if it is too high. There are occasional exceptions to that. If I open this again, you will see that if I go down to manual mode, I can compensate for that 5% discrepancy. And by that I mean where the sound is too loud and the compressor can't cope with it, or the sound is too low and the compressor can't cope with it. When I go into manual mode on those switches, I have 2 volume controls here, one for channel 1 and one for channel 2. Because I'm in manual, I can now do a sound test. So with channel 1, I'm going to turn it all the way down. You can now see from the display on the screen that there are no bars bouncing up and down on channel 1. So it's a sound test. I go 1 2 1 2, raising this volume control, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, and I keep doing so until I'm bouncing between approximately 20 and 10. I can then adjust channel 2 the same way, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, and ultimately, as you can see, I get the 2 bars level. When I'm speaking now, I'm bouncing well above 20, I'm not going higher than 10. And that's the sort of sound level we are looking for. You are safe, as I say, up until 0. If, however, you go too high, once we get up here, and if I go 1 2 1 2, you will see the overlight lights up there. That tells us that if we are recording sound, it will be distorted. So as you can see, there are 2 channels here. I'm going to go back to auto for now. On your memory card, you're going to be recording 4 different things. You're going to be recording visuals, 2 tracks of audio, channel 1 and channel 2, and a time code. Let's talk about the audio first. I'm going to turn the camera around here and show you the audio system that we're working on at the moment. At the moment, the camera audio is working off a condenser microphone which is plugged into the input 1 select switch on the side of the camera here. You will notice there is an input 1 and beside it there is an input 2. There is no microphone currently plugged into input 2. Professional crews will often do what is called splitting sound. This enables them to plug 2 microphones in simultaneously when you are recording, and by having 2 points of sound recording in the room, they can then record a stereo sound which can be later mixed in a sound studio or in a production house to give proper Dolby stereo sound, etc. We do not do that for the purposes of this basic module. We keep it very simple. We do not split sounds. In other words, we will always plug whatever microphone we are using into the input 1. Therefore, the important button here is the button directly above this, which is called the input 1 control switch. There are 3 settings: line, mic, and mic plus 48 volts. Line is for when these cameras are used in multicam setups, which we won't be doing this module because of COVID restrictions. Mic is when the microphone has its own power source, and mic plus 48 volts is when you are asking the camera to power the microphone. Because this condenser microphone does not have its own battery, we always set it to mic plus 48 volts. 48 volts are sent down the cable, power the microphone, and because of that, as you can see on our display here, we get our channels recording sound. There is a input 2 switch directly above input 2 with the same settings: line, mic, and mic plus 48 volts. We do not concern ourselves with that because we won't be using input 2. It's imperative to remember you always plug whatever microphone you are using into input 1. The third switch is the channel 2 input. This simply gives you 2 options. They read input 1 or input 2. If I had a second microphone plugged in, I would move this down to input 2 and it would record the sound off input 2. Because I don't have a second microphone plugged in, you can see when I do that, we're now only recording sound onto channel 1. The problem here is that there is no such thing as nothing when it comes to sound. In other words, Channel 2 is now recording what is called white noise, emptiness, which has a kind of a tss sound. So your sound recording will be destroyed if you're recording nothing onto channel 2. You must remember therefore that because we are only using the input 1, the channel 2 switch must always be set to input 1. You're now telling channel 2 input to copy the sound that's being recorded through your input 1, and if I turn around again, you will see that both bars are now bouncing and we're getting correct sound balance and bounce for what we wish to record.